Okay, I had a guy on one of my other vids ask me a question, and we're really a couple of little questions, and really to try to answer, to add to the video that I already had and some of the information I left out. It's going to be much better that I actually do a video like this. It's in one of my other videos as a piecework mail too. And of course, all of my videos all contain little pieces of information. If you went off the name necessarily, it's not all the information that's entailed in between it. Y'all all know that real well. It was a thing, though, about El and Saturn and how those were the gods of the Phoenicians and therefore the Canaanites, because the Phoenicians called themselves Canaan, and the ancient gods that were there. And I keep telling people that the Greek gods, of course, everybody knows Greeks and Roman gods are the same. A long time ago, they realized that they all line up. Some people had to actually learn it that way, and so on. But Hermes is Mercury, and that's the messenger and stuff, and of course that's the planet, and then so on. And some of the planets are named basically off of these guys, and the Roman thing like Jupiter and Saturn and these guys. Well, we're talking about Saturn here and how important it was back then, and why he was somewhat important. When you see him, he's got a sickle with him quite often. He has a thing about childbirth, seasons, all this renewal type thing. He's a god of wealth, but he also controls a lot of other things. He really is a pivotal type of god. And in every people's culture that has this, he's quite pivotal, although certain other ones have, their own standouts, if you will. And of course, there are moments, and you can kind of see it reflected in all of the cultures, that whenever everything started going into a drought, everybody started rivering into a storm god worship, hoping for rain and things. And a lot of weird things were done back in the days. But what we're looking at is like Saturn. And so when he's described in the Bible, this is, by the way, BibleHub.com. You can go to BibleHub.com and start looking up things, and it'll show you all these versions of the Bible. It's a lot easier to me than grabbing my Septuagint, my other pieces over here. Some of these are literally falling apart and so on. And so it's easy to do this. It shows you all the versions. You can go up here and pick your version, and it'll go all the way through a lot of different ones. And then sometimes also over here on the side, and you can choose to say, okay, well, it says it here. What's this one, and this one say? And you might get a better influx of what they're talking about each time, and all this comparative type stuff. Regardless of that, this one here will show you like Smith's, ATS, Easton's Bible, and a few other ones that are in here, the thesaurus also, and of course Strong's setup, and what it says, and what words mean, and so on in the Bible. And there's a lot of times where things are only mentioned a few times in the Bible, and other times there's the same thing mentioned but by different names, and so on. And that relates to this and the story of a god of 1,000 names, because Saturn is that god. And the reason why they say he's the god of 1,000 names is because people that have done ancient research to different cultures find the same thing over and over again. Let me cut to the chase just a moment, though. So he's always showing the sickle and so on, and a lot of people have a belief that he started around the time that agriculture started. Agriculture goes off a zodiac. Let's see if I can do this correctly. Zodiacs are run off 12 symbols around the zodiac of the year, and it keeps coming around and around and around. So 12 is very important, and it has a cycle of it going around the sun, not at the same cycle we do, we're 1 year, but it takes 12. Now, it takes a lot of science to figure this out, but believe it or not, it apparently happened Proto-Sumerians, because they knew this idea. And a lot of people come off of, where did they come up with, why didn't they go with 5, 10, 15, 20? Why do they have 6 and 12 and 60 and 360 as their declination? And it seems odd, but whenever we got to computer languages, hexadecimal, running off of this same 6 concept, is what runs easier through the logic chords, although our brain doesn't hook up like that. So people try to, oh, they had computers, and no, I'm not going there. Stop. Okay, so the 6 and 60 and things that goes on in 360, well, we still use this today. It came from them, and it's all been covered up somewhat, and I try to show this in a lot of my videos, but 360 degrees is the circumference of a circle. We know that we live on a circle now, right? We're not going to go flat earthy here. Please, if you are, I'm trying not to offend you. Just get past this point. And they knew that the sun, as it goes down and comes up through the seasons, as it goes, shorter days and longer days, it drops 1 degree in that 360 degrees per day. Now, it's possible this is the exact reason that they have that 360, and then you declimate, you break everything down, and you're going to have that 66, everything, you're going to have that. And of course, 6 and 60 are declamations of 10. So they had a 10, and people act like they didn't have a 0. Well, if they had 20 and 30, they did. It was just different. But they had that. And they counted these weird, odd numbers. I mean, they had advanced math. There's a video I've got where they have found now in one of these tablets, which seemed like a bunch of numbers and something foolish, they finally figured out based off 6 was trigonometry. And actually, the formula that's used is a whole lot simpler than the ones that we try to use. And it seems to be a little more accurate, too. So it's amazing what they had back in that time. But of course, in Babylonian area, that time that we talk about, before that, there's the Sumerians. And I keep telling you, before the Sumerians, there was the real Sumerians that were in that area that predate what we used to call, but now we're kind of, so I don't know if we're really in the age of talking about who I'm talking about. And then there's Proto-Sumerians, and these guys that lived there before in the different cultures that were in there that seemed to have been slightly invaded by some people, and then everything changed, right? And boom, and it really developed, and it looks like it's out of nowhere. While we're studying all this, I'm showing you Proto-Indo-Europeans, and that out of nowhere isn't out of nowhere. The oddity is that if you go to where they are, they don't show all these things, but it's because it's kind of long gone and trampled over. But we're finding pieces of it every year, and it's one of the neat things. Recently I've been able to make a few videos about some newer finds, and then actually genetic data about some old finds that were old hat, and all we know about that is corded ware and blah blah blah, and they may have had trade or are part of these people maybe, and genetics goes, no, this is them. That's the same people and the same pottery. Well, duh, but you can't prove it. You have to have this, and it just fades off into a bunch of stuff like the Proto-Indo-European language. When you put it all together, that's what it becomes. But we can't find anybody yet that ever wrote down that language because it's pre-writing. And of any kind that we found that shows and verifies and proves it. There is some ancient stick writing and stuff that goes back to 22,000 BC that kind of verifies the same situation, but it still looks Proto-Indo-European at that. So amazingly, this linguistic goes back a lot farther than that. This comes out of caveman language and crap. Really, honestly, people, I've been trying to get to that point in a few videos, but here it is, and I don't know why I'm doing it in the middle of trying to get an introductory to talking about Saturn. So I'll stop now. Let me just reset and go back to Saturn. Ancient people that went through these cultures had developed gods already, and of course the sun god, and I talk about ancient primordial sun worship, and it wasn't like people popped up out of nowhere. I mean, people were worshiping the day and the sun as an entity that watched over them since we realized that it goes up and down, and we realized it goes up and down, and then people became shamans out of people realizing that other people are really important with the up and down thing. And then the seasons and all, it comes all the way back from there. It reaches all the way back. But so what's weird about this Saturn thing is it's the one that you can see the farthest away. And the next farthest away, but brighter. In fact, Saturn has a ring or a halo, or, like a halo gods around it, but brighter than, or as Saturn would be if it was as big as its halo, is Jupiter. And Jupiter is a little bit faster, slower. It goes 20 years, or right at it, what is it, 19 point whatever, anyhow, 20 years around a cycle. So it's a slower type thing, or, oh my God, am I mixing these two up again? Okay, listen, we're just going to go on. Anyhow, it's a 12-year type cycle, and people believe that it goes off of that. And of course, there's the king of all the stars, and still to this day, whenever they do horoscopes, as it goes through it, Jupiter is a king star, and as it goes through certain constellation, the king is in this, and this is this, and everything else. And when king's in Leo, oh well, Leo is the king of the beasts, and all this type stuff. Anyhow, and where a planet chooses to do its declination, it does this thing. Let me see if I can get a little pointer or something here to show you. A planet will do this thing where it goes across the sky and it'll stop, and then it looks like it backs up and does a little half loop, and then it starts going again and just goes all the way around. And this happens because as we're spinning around the sun, we start to come around to it, and so we're catching up to its slow round, and then we overtake that and back. And but in the way it looks to the distant sky, it just seems to do this whoa and get going. And wherever it does that at used to be damn important to people that paid attention to it. Nobody else did. They put a lot of importance on these type of things, right? So Chiun, this god Saturn that we hear about as a god of grain and these things, and the god of the zodiac concept and the 12 and the end of the year and father time and all these things that goes with that, right? And because of things grow, and if you do it right, and the idea of the grasshoppers and the ants and which one did things, it ends up being wealth and a lot of other concepts, right? So it's real complex even whenever it's happening. But oddly, it seems like, well, this god of grain, at least from 5 people that are far stretched all across through here, have this same god that does the same thing and symbolizes the same aspects, and they all have a connection to this same star. And you know, we say now, well, this star and that Saturn, and people used to worship Saturn. Well, it's a little different. Back then it's the exact same thing, though. These people knew all of this and da-da-da. And this is secret, mystical, magic, woo, that regular people did not know. And the astronomers and the people that ran things and knew what was going on knew this, and the common person wasn't supposed to be privy with it, and they weren't taught all of these mysteries. And they kind of got lost about half the time twice. And of course, people don't realize it, but you know, the ancient Islamic people actually were way deep into this astronomy thing and a bunch of numbers and mathematics, and they helped develop algebra and a few words that go with them. You can definitely tell, and they named a lot of the stars too. But then their religion changed. It was looked at a lot of this hocus pocus was somewhat evil, and so all of this advanced math type thing was again hocus pocus witchcraft, and so they had to turn it off. And whenever they did, it stopped their culture there for a while. Kind of went back to the let's all be humble and act like they did in the old days situation again. And a lot of religions harken back to that. And again, most of these are some type of death cult that seems like they're all waiting for the end of the world. And in fact, everybody talks about Armageddon, but I've proven that in at least 12 videos. That happened exactly when Jesus said 40 years later, and that was Armageddon, and that was the end of the Jewish revolt. Lasted 7 years, trials and tribulations. Hey, check it out. It started in the year 66 in the 6th month and the 6th day. For those who have wisdom, count the number. It set it all up to show you that Rome and everything, and this Roman Catholic Church and what we have today. Irregardless how long I go winded on these things before I get into it, but there's some background and probably damn well enough of it. Saturn was looked at as being Chiun. It had a lot of names that are extremely similar, and so is Proto-Indo-European linguistics and so on. And so you have this Chiun, this Chiun, this Kun, this name that seems to go along with it, and it seems to be a hidden type situation. And it's been a second sun for people and all kinds of things in religion, but let's get into this before I just sit here and talk. It's the name of an idol worshipped by the Israelites in the desert. As in Acts 7:43, it was most probably the planet Saturn, worshipped by Eastern nations as an evil spirit to be appropriated by sacrifices See Remphan. So there was sacrifices to this god, and at Sinai, people don't read past the Ten Commandments. But after that, he tells you there will be sacrifices. People have to give the firstborn out the matrix, and it uses that word, and that's actually a symbolic womb of the female. And they say that you have to do it just like cows and all this type of stuff. So if you get into it, you can find out all the stuff that actually people had gone through during that time trying to find God. And it's not about one symbolic people that ran around in a tent. It's really about all these people and what had happened in elder times and how it came into it. So it's a little bit different. And of course, it's not true, but then again, it is. It has a lot of truth in it, or as to say. And again, I've shown where it comes from Sumerians and things like that. Eastern Bible tells you that it translates also as Rephan or Remphan, and you'll see that listed in a lot of sources. And of course, there are times in the Bible where it straight out says that you have Chiun to your gods, built a tabernacle to Moloch, and your star of your god Remphan, just directly out. So what is the star of Remphan? It's the star that moves. That's basically what planets means. It means wandering stars. So all these other ones are fixed, and these other ones are doing stuff and acting upon the constellations. Do you understand? Follow me? Right. There's different names for different planets. And of course, the moon is an entity, and we're an entity, and the sun's an entity, but everything acts upon us because it's all about us, and we're real self-centered at this time. We don't know that we're going around the sun and everything else. We're real self-centered. We think all the little dots up there don't mean anything, and like in my recent space video where we're flying through space, no, they don't know it's even a galaxy type situation. They actually think that the story of the old primordial gods running into each other left the Milky Way and the asteroid belt, right? And pieces of it still falling to Earth as pieces from that, which is some reality to it, which is amazing. But the ancient Sumerians also said, now check this out, the people of this time said that the stars in our sky were like our own sun, but as a torch in the distance far, far away. And that's amazing. And you know, the farther you get away, the light gets dimmer or gets brighter. And they measured them by this. And a lot of ancient sites, they find constellations drilled into the wall. I show this in a couple of my videos. And it's got depths of holes that are different. And they figured out the deeper the hole, the brighter the star. It's amazing. And so they're able to make sure, verify by depths of holes on sticks, like a dowel type that you would use in there. It's a kind of amazing little thing that they've figured out, and that the people before figured out to do to show it, and that would last this long. Imagine if they did other things that would have lasted this long other than a few stoneworks and things like that. Anyhow, Chiun, thus Hebrew Chiun, is translated in Amos, the King James Version. The vowels represent an assimilation to some such word as shakutz. It's a detestable thing, galul, or an idol, properly a filthy thing, by using the same vowels. So there is the secrecy to the Bible situation. People talk about it, and well, what is it? Well, there's a lot of different little forms of it. One of them is that a lot of detestable things will have the same type of vowels attached to them, so this sound that runs through them. And we kind of do that to this day. I don't want to give you a bunch of examples, but in consonants, with the well-known habit of the punctuators, compare Moloch and Molech with the vowels of Bosheth, or shame. So that's what they're kind of giving you, that idea. The Syriac version has preserved the correct vocalization, apparently also the Septuagint, and they tell you the consonants in there, particularly the Greek manuscripts, can get changed over time, but we vocalize it as Chiun. I don't want to zoom in on all this. And Chiun is the Assyrian Kia, which is the earth, Awanu, right? And so it declamates face, actually, in some ways. And whenever it says God's face hovered over the waters and all this type of situation, right? So They tell you here the passage name refers to the Saturn worship, which appears to have been in vogue in the prophets' days. The Israelites should carry with them the exile, the images of their gods, render with the margin of the Revised Vision or British and American, ye shall take up, etc., the tabernacle of your god Moloch and the star of your god Remphan. And people have realized that Chiun, and they call it a heathen god in Strong's, but when they say a heathen god, they let you know clearly that they actually were worshiping these gods and how it changes to it. Chiun, from kun, properly a statue, an idol, but used by euphemism for some heathen deities, perhaps corresponding to Priapus, so Apis, perhaps, and a bull worship. Baal Peor can be Chiun, so the father, Peor, the father of Baal, and who is El in your Bible, and all the temple and the chapel, and where all of that linguistics come from, and El this and El that. Elohim in your Bible, which is a plural entity, is this council of gods. Angel, Michael, yeah, Raphael, yeah, it's in there like crazy. Ariel, Gabriel, yeah, Israel. The ancient Phoenician word for the star was Israel. Yeah, the god that they used was off of this Chiun and so on. Yeah, Chiun, but it comes from there. In fact, they'll show it right here. Yeah, Chiun, also called Remphan, a god of the Phoenicians. Right? So there's astrology attached to it. Remphan, Chittim wood is attached to it. Remphan again, Chloe in your Bible, and how that works into it. Star gods, Sukkoth, Moloch, Semites itself, Babylonia, Assyria, religion, 23 occurrences of it. So the uproar in Ephesians talks about it, but ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch and Chiun your images. So tabernacles are the holy tents. So when they told you to make a certain tent and do all that thing, that actually, oddly, if you'll look, was this. Yeah, so why would they make a tent? Well, El has a tent on a mountaintop and things too. I really should finish with that Yale thing that I actually had in the other video, because she puts it all together too for you. But let me see if I can get a few things out. I know I've rambled like crazy. Where are we at here? 20 minutes more? And so Remphan, a name for Chiun, the planet Saturn, right? Concordance in the Bibles here, it's rampant. The name adopted by Luke in his narrative of Acts. Ye bear Sothuk, and your king, you Chiun to your images, right? So this is, you have these other images, and you're not supposed to have any images before this one. And who is the one? And for them, it is supposed to be Yahweh. And they tell you clearly that at this moment that there is a meeting of people that used to worship El, and he was the God of the patriarchs, because he'll tell you that I did not appear to Abraham and Jacob as Yahweh. I appeared as El Shaddai. Well, who is El Shaddai? El Shaddai is Shad means breasts, and Shaddai, Ai means mountains. They're at Sinai, so this is the mountain of sin. And this has to do with sin and a moon god worship too. It's the same point, and people can't catch that in the moment too. It's an odd twist that's in this story. After they wandered for 40 years, symbolically a generation, out in the middle of a desert around in circles, right? And somehow this God kept them alive when there's millions of them and nothing to eat, but there was manna from heaven. We don't need to get into that. But Moloch, and you know that's bad, and they sacrificed their sons and gods to the tabernacles of Moloch and all those type of things, and so they got into an extremely bad worship here where they thought they had to do this to appease these certain gods. And it's because of beliefs that were attached to this. And of course we talk about how Saturn had eaten all of his kids except for Zeus, but then Zeus offended him, avenged him, and then got everybody else free out of his stomach and all these things. And how does that play out? Well, it played out with the way that everything ran through right before the time of the Bible. Everybody wants to say, well, oh no, it was written long, long ago. No, scholars have definitely picked it out to where the oldest stories in there barely reach past maybe 700 BC, and these are other stories from other people passed down. In fact, it's just their slight variation of it that they have going on shows up. That's the earliest, and then after the captivity in 500 BC and before, and then they don't find Deuteronomy till after that. It even says it in the Bible itself. Of course, you can't write of something until it's afterwards, and this is where a lot of the prophecies come in. You know, it's amazing if I, after the fact, write a book that tells you it's before the fact and has prophecies. They try to work out pretty good. What's also amazing is some of them didn't work out that well, and it also shows you how sometimes they didn't quite have history down right even back then from where we remember. So the Semites, so they had these different gods, you know, and stuff, and you have these ideas of Eber and Hebrews and stuff, Abraham, Ham, or Rabi, and their Hamites and things. What's going on with all that? Well, yeah, it's all through there. And Babylonia, Baal, Ashtoreth, Asherites. What are Asherites? There's a god at the time is the Asher, but hold on, there's Asherah. She was the queen of Heaven. She was the wife of El, and their son was Baal. And they also had Anat, who was Anatolia, Anat. And that's also into Egypt. They have these same gods, and it's amazing how everybody had this same thing around this proto time that had the same idea and separated. Were they fighting in elder times about religion, slight differences? No, it doesn't look like that so much. It really doesn't, because they were so closely related. People nowadays just want to say, well, oh, they were all pagans, or they were all this or all that, and it's somehow these little small group of tent people were everything. But no, this is a story about everybody and what everybody kind of went through, and they're kind of pinning it on these one people that at this point still try to rely on the fact that we have a hearkening back to this one moment in time. But things happened a long time before this and through. So this star of the god Remphan, this is Saturn, and I know I left something out. Man, I know I have that feeling right now. So let me go to something else here. Let me go to the names of the planets and show you that. So like the moon, in Sumerian it was Nana, and you hear about Nanar Sin. Well, Babylonian later it's just Sin, but then that's from Nanar Sin or Nana. Now Nana is the female moon goddess, Nana, and to this day you'll call your grandma Nana. And at the time that it was invoked, she would have been the grandmother of the gods that were going on. Isn't that amazing? We still have that. It's more amazing than that. It keeps going on. Selene of the Greeks, Luna, and we know Luna and lunars and stuff like that. But amazingly in Egyptian, it's Ea or Ea. Oh, what is Ea? Actually, in the Old Sumerian, Ea is not the god of the moon, or Enki. Enki they try to put on Mercury here, but Enki was really the god of the entire whole world. Later it's Nabu, or Nabo. Here it is. But no, it's actually back then that would have been Ningishita. He's the one that it's attached onto. But Yah, as in Yahweh, what's the idea there? Well, the moon plays on the primordial waters of the oceans and causes tides, and they have a belief which is radically thoughtful for the time, but the ebbing and flow of the tides caused by the moon causes everything in the world to go around, like when you spin a ball and it's slightly out of round and it has a little wah, and that's what does it, and it causes it to wah on us a little bit. Isn't that amazing? But anyhow, so it has to do with tides, but in Sanskrit that's Chandra, and you're about Chandragupta and these things like that. It all attaches to it. And Mercury goes with Buddha, by the way. Now they say Enki's with that, but it's Ningishita and then Naba. Hermes, Mercury measure, but Sabgu is what they called it in the Egyptian. Venus, and we talked about the primordial goddess of Venus and how everybody knew so much about it. Venus, by the way, in the way that it moves and pivots around, I should have loaded up the video. When it pivots around, it actually makes a star that looks like the stars that we draw as a star. Whenever you learn as a kid and you go choo, 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 right? But that's actually a pentagram star, isn't it? Well, amazingly, that's what it does. The female makes a pentagram star like that. Now, the Star of the Remphan is a six-pointed star, and that's what you still see as the Star of David. So they never let go some of this symbology that they did, but no longer do they have an idol, so people can't track it down to ancient things. They just drop that, and then it's the god of everybody anyhow. Let me just go on. So Venus is Inanna, right? That's also Diana. But Ishtar and Ishtara is the queen of heaven. Aphrodite, so we know her by, but Venus again in Latin, and so we call it that. But also Beila, and that goes into your Bible too, and Sheba, and so and Jai, and again it has an AI sound on the end of it, but what does that go with? Well, the moon, the mountain of the moon, and all that concept they have in Egypt. But Bealiah oddly means Baal is Yahweh. So where's that all come from? That's weird. Well, it's amazing. They've got it in their name, and they tell you that Baal is Yahweh. So this moon makes Yah, right? Baal is the god that makes the moon do the thing that, anybody following me? And the moon is just reflecting the light of the sun. And of course, they're all hooked up with Ra. It's all sun worship and how everything goes around and around in a day and everything. But it's based on sun worship and zodiac stars and things like that, right? I haven't lost anybody on this, but Sukra, the sun was known as Utu or Shamash later, Helios, and you'll see that in Hellenistic and hell even off of it, and it's real hot in the sun, it's real hot in hell. Sol, Sol Invictus, Saul of your Bible, right? There's so many words that contain this Saul and this cleansing sun and Pinesall and solvents and yeah, oh man, you could go there. But Aten, that's the sun's on there. Of course, Ra and his ideas and stuff. And a lot of people correlate and say, you know, Ra. Well, there's Horus that hooks with it too, and there's 7 declamations of 12 declamations of Horus. Well, Horus's 12 declamations actually correspond to the 12 hours, Horus hours. You just move a letter of the day and how it runs through, and then the sun sets, as in set, right? Seti and set, and then it goes through the underworld we're not looking at right now and comes back up the other side through 2 sacred mountains, and riding on a chariot of fire goes all the way across. Saturn is seen as in his chariot. It all works off this concept. Sun come up, moon go down, world spin round and round, right? So Jupiter, though, that they have Enlil there at the first part of the Sumerians, right? So then there's that, which is the fight with Enki that came on supposedly, and then we bleed into Jupiter belief, the sky god, everything that goes on, the storm gods. So it ends up being Enlil equal to Marduk, right? Equal to Zeus, equal to Jupiter. But now they don't show a J in here. Why don't they show a J? There is no J. Till the 1300s and so on, there really is no J. And because of that fact, you know, what is Judea and what is Jupiter? Well, it doesn't show up there, but then it's hooked up to Horus, Heru, Herwepes Taui. This hooks up to the ancient gods. And of course, I skipped Mars. Mars is Gulgana in the ancient Sumerian, and this is the ancient bull of heaven. And then Ares kills him at the end of Taurus to become Ares, and this is in the Gilgamesh story. Everybody following me? So then Mars is Nergal, he's Ares, right? And there's some declamation on that idea, but yeah, so Ares in the time of Aryans and the rams and things that go along with that. But then Jupiter, again to that. But Saturn was Ninurta, and it stayed Ninurta, right? But then also, people argue that it swallowed up the idea of Saturn when it became this, and it talked about how it put up the heavens and did all the things, that it's a usurping situation. And back then, when you killed one god, you took off his power too. Like if you were to, playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you kill a guy and you take his weapon, now you've got that power, and now you can use it. I've got the wand of somebody, or I've got the scepter of something, and if you get the scepter of these guys, you can get it. But then Chronos, same guy, and Saturnus, we can see that, and the Egyptians say that it doesn't exist. Anybody know who that is in Egypt? Well, it's actually a couple of people and the aspects of it. I'll say leave it down in the comments on who you think that it is. Maybe a little explanation if you have any to go along with it, or just a guess, but that's fine. We can go off that. But then Sanskrit, it's Sani, and so you can see connections with words and things that go off of it. Now, oh man, so when you hook it up to Chinese and stuff, and you can see connections, and of course this say they have in the Japanese all hooks up to gods. And now we have water star, metal star, fire, wood, earth, and how they hook up to it. But interestingly, I don't know, let me see if I can find that. Here's Kiwaku here, but they hook it up to Mars instead of Jupiter with Kiwan, right? Or Saturn. But oddly, in Japanese, Chinsei, the Chinese star, is Xinjiang, and then the Chinese have the Xinjiang, right? Xinjiang dynasty type situation. Boom, that's Saturn. So you can see whenever things take over. This all runs through cycles and so on. And then the thing that comes back around and redoes everybody is after you go a zodiacal great year, 28,600 years, you start it all over again, and the sun god tries to save everybody. And we go through it all again, and what time do we run through ice ages? Well, that becomes important, and whenever we get into an ice age, all of this becomes a lot more important, because everything's in a nuclear wintry kind of situation. We're all closer to the equator and so on, and have to live through micro phases of each one. It becomes a lot more dependent too at that time. So where are we at? Breaking 30? Oh Lord. Let's see if I can just finish. Man, I got a lot more I could say, guys. I really do. And I know I've gone off in left field, and I even left one thing out, which is terrible. And but let me just show you, I guess in one of my old videos, a piece that I had where it's showing Yale Scholar here, and her account. Let me back it up just a touch, because she's talking about how it didn't used to be Yahweh, it was El Shaddai. And we'll let it go, and hopefully it won't cut before then.
6 verses 2 to 4. It's assigned to P, and here God says, I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not make myself known to them by my name, Yahweh. Now this contradicts the J source. And many scholars have suggested that P and E preserve a memory of a time when Israel worshipped the Canaanite god El.
Saturn.
P and E wish to claim that the God who covenanted with the patriarchs is the God of the Exodus, but now with a new name. They also, like J, they want to assert continuity. But in doing so, they do it in a way that really ultimately draws attention to the fundamental discontinuity, the sense of a new beginning. And to understand that new beginning, we need to look at the differences between patriarchal religion and the new Yahwism. There's a list on your handout, so I hope everyone got a copy of the handout. If you didn't...
Did you get a copy of your handout?
Did you get a copy of your handout?
Just
see if I can just skip.
It's based on information that's supplied by many scholars. I relied very much on Michael Coogan, but others as well. Look first at the sheet that gives you the titles of God, and you'll see that in the patriarchal traditions, all right, so we're talking about Genesis primarily. I've thrown in some other texts also, but focusing for a moment on the patriarchal traditions of Genesis.
What she's going to talk about here is that the actual, I caught her in a terrible moment, whenever they refer to Yahweh in the Bible, in a lot of the text, it doesn't say that name in any way, shape, or form. And we know that we're supposed to read it later as Adonai. And that's amazing, because that's Adonis. And you're supposed to read Yahweh back into the idea of Adonis and think, Why would that be in effect? And who had that guy going on? And he's supposed to have this resurrection thing going on. What's going on with all that? Well, it all attaches together. Of course, that's been all smoked out into this one little smoke screen of concept, but hopefully I'll reveal a lot of this. Let's let her go.
This is God is 6 times called El Shaddai.
6 times.
Other names are El Elyon, El Olam, El Roi, El Bethel. You can see the translations of these. The everlasting God, God Most High, a God of seeing, the God of the house of God, and so on. El is the name of the chief god in the Canaanite pantheon. Flip over to the other side of your handout.
See if I can get it louder.
That's an important set of texts that were discovered at a place called Ras Shamra. Ras Shamra was ancient Ugarit. In 1928, a peasant in Syria discovered a tomb at Ras Shamra, which was subsequently excavated by the French, and it was found to contain a library of tablets that were written in a language very, very close to Biblical Hebrew. It's clear that Hebrew is simply a Canaanite dialect. In fact, I remember reading one scholar said, if you go back far enough, you're really hard pressed to tell the difference between Canaanite and Hebrew.
It's the same.
And the reason it's the same and very similar is that they have that Greek is just backwards and written the other way, and you could put it off a mirror. It's amazing. But Phoenicians called themselves what? Well, they called themselves Canaan. And so now we know the Canaanites aren't just some little piece, and the Phoenicians aren't some little piece, and it's a little different than what it said. Although there were great merchant states inside of that, like Tyre and Sidon and so on, like Poseidon, like the gods of the sea, like people that controlled the sea somewhat too, and that shows you how mythology leads into reality somewhat. Let's let her go and show the comparison here, though, before this ends.
In these texts, we read of the exploits of the gods of Canaanite religion. These gods include the sky god El, I've listed here, the father of the various gods and humans. El is a wife, Asherah, she's listed 3rd on your paper, a mother goddess, their daughter Anat, who is a goddess of love and war, she's quite fierce, and then there's son Baal, who is a storm god. He's depicted in mythological literature as defeating both the chaotic sea god, sea god Yam, and the god of death, Mot.
Now, in the Bible, he kills Leviathan, and that's the same thing as the sea god Yam. Yam is the name for the sea, and I could go off into left field right now, but now we see An, or El, is like a heaven or sky god, and then below that, created by him, his sons, are the rain clouds and the storm god that controls everything. It's your El, and your lightning god that throws his bolts and makes things happen, and all that. And of course, people believe lightning in a primordial soup started life. So you get all this esoteric knowledge out of this concept, and how the rains start the rivers to going to make everything happen, and it rains and flowers bloom and so on, and there's seasons when gods come into effect and all this type of stuff, and people go through worshiping cycles and stuff, and that's all knocked down now. That's all pagan, and now we just do it with one, and then we have holidays and we just kind of go with it, and farmers use an almanac, and everybody knows now all that stuff, so it's not a secret mystery anymore. Well, what's the secrets of it? Well, here, I'm telling you, what the secrets are. Let's go.
There are striking resemblances between the biblical God of the patriarchs and the Canaanite god El. El is the head of the council of gods. He is said to have a long white beard. He dwells on a mountain top in a tent. His epithets include father of all creatures, bull, king. He is also described as the protector of patriarchs, patriarchal figures, a god of the father of the clan, it says in the text.
Saturn.
He guides them, he protects them, he promises them descendants.
El.
Many biblical passages depict God exactly this way, as the head of a council of divine beings. He's occasionally described with some of the epithets that are associated with El. He's referred to as the father of all creatures. There are poetic passages in which he is referred to as bull, also certainly as king. And in the patriarchal narratives, God refers to himself as the God of the Father. I am the God of the Father, the same way El is referred to. He guides and protects the patriarchs. He makes promises of progeny to Abraham and his heirs. He also is associated with the mountaintop Sinai and gives instructions for the building of a tabernacle, a tent-like structure in which he will dwell. Many personal and place names in the patriarchal narratives are compounds in which one element is El. Yisrael, Ishmael, Beth El. El is
Okay, and I'll stop it there, guys. But so that kind of shows you that it started there. It's not until after Sinai that we start to see even any euphorics that end up with the Yah. Then you find weird ones like Elijah, and Elijah is actually a compound. It means El is Yah. This is the prophet that brought the idea of the change to him and stuff. But yeah, so there it is, and there's the change I was talking about whenever I put in the little comment to you, and you know who you are. Anyhow, regardless, guys, there's just another reveal here, and I'll poke it in here in the middle of some different videos. We'll do it one night, and like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy. More to come again on this, but we're going to get out of this timeline. We're way before this again. Peace.